everyone. Welcome back. Thank you again for joining us. Thank you so much for your time. And I know any time that we invest in our spiritual lives and just time with God is time well invested, well profound, well impacted, and well beneficial. So we're going to continue reading Joshua. We're now in the chapters 5, 6, and 7. So again, we're reading chapters 5, 6, 7 in the book of Joshua. And I just want to say we are getting closer each and every day to completing reading the Bible in a sequential order. And I can't believe we're again in March. It's amazing. Each day we're growing, we're learning. Each day is a learning day. And I hope this summary can be inspirational, even motivational, and just a moment of encouragement to each and every one of us to read the Bible, to read God's Word, and to just delve into a spiritual rest. When we read God's Word is different than when we read like a text message, an email, or work, something from our daily lives. This really is a break. It's one of my mindfulness and spiritual uplifting moments when I read God's Word. So I'm very excited to be here. And let's continue. So for Joshua 5, it's about Israel being circumcised a second time. We read in the book of Exodus, I believe it was Exodus, they were already circumcised when they left Egypt. The reason why, I don't know if you're probably thinking this, why are they getting circumcised a second time, is that first generation who left Egypt were no longer alive anymore. A lot of them were old, and a lot of them God had put to rest because a lot of them did evil deeds. They betrayed even each other and God, so they are non-existent. It's like grandparents, you could say. Now, this current generation of Israel with Joshua, they were born in the wilderness, or they were born in this Exodus time, or in this time of exiting Egypt. So they had no recollection of what it was to live in Egypt. They didn't have that. They already were born in the wild and like being like a nomadic tribe, moving and moving until they got to the promised land of Canaan. So that's why they had to get circumcised again. And it says here in verse 3, so Joshua made flint knives and circumcised the sons of Israel at Gibeath Haralot. And this is interesting. It says Hebrew for the hill of the foreskins, named for the event. So Gibeath Haralot is the hill of the foreskins in Hebrew. That's kind of funny. And I just want to mention again that Canaan is the land of milk and honey. It's not cow milk and bees honey. It's actually milk from sheep or goats back in those times. And honey actually meant the syrups that were made from the dates or the grapes. And that was the epitome of sweetness. And because bees honey were very rare, and that was considered the choicest of food, or very expensive food. So we're honored to have honey now, like so accessible, right? So they got circumcised, and remember that was a part of the covenant, or that promise, that sacrificial promise they made with God, and it was also a way of marking themselves that they were God's children. Now, this was very interesting in this chapter, chapter 5, because there was an interesting guest in this chapter. So in verse 13 it says, now when Joshua was by Jericho, he looked up, and behold, a man was standing opposite him with his drawn sword. Drawn sword sounds like a soldier in his hand. And Joshua went to him and said, are you for us or for our adversaries? Like, are you one of us? Are you like part of Israel? Are you supporting us? Or are you one of our enemies from the enemy lands that they had to, defeat? And he said, no, rather I have now come as captain of the army of the Lord. And in my, not the New King James, I'm sorry, the King James Version, 1960, and in the Spanish version, Reina Valera, 1960, captain is with a capital C, so that's interesting. And it also said Prince of the Heavenly Host, and I don't know if you guys know, but that is in reference to Jesus Christ. So I was like, oh, that was Jesus, like Joshua met Jesus. Then Joshua fell with his face toward the earth and bowed down, and said to him, what does my Lord have to say to his servant? And then the captain of the Lord's army said to Joshua, remove your sandals from your feet, because the place where you're standing is holy, or set apart to the Lord. And Joshua did. So that was very nice. That was a special gift. So it's interesting how Jesus comes in different ways throughout the Old Testament. It's very, very interesting. Now Joshua 6 talks about the conquest of Jericho. So and this was very I kind of find it a little silly, but then I see a big profound effect of what God tells them to do. So God tells them to do is they have to be quiet for 7 days, and the seven priests of Israel will, it says in verse 4, seven priests of Israel will carry seven trumpets. So each priest one trumpet from a ram's horn, right? And the ahead of the ark. Then on the seventh day, you shall march around the city 7 times. So each, for the first 6 days, they just make one round, walk around the city. One. The seventh day, they're going to do that, walk around the city, but 7 times. And then the priest shall blow the trumpets on the seventh day. When they make a long blast, so now I'm in verse 5, Joshua 6, with the ram's horn, and when you hear the sound of the trumpet, all the people shall cry out with a great shout, like a battle cry. And the wall of the city will fall down in its place, and the people shall go up, each man going straight ahead or climbing over the rubble, and conquering Jericho. So Joshua repeats the same directions to the priests and to the people, and they did. And they were not able to talk. So you imagine you have to save up your voice for 7 days because you're going to make a great war cry. You can't exhaust your voice. So 7 days, no talking. I don't know about each of you who are listening to this or will listen to this in the future, but that for me is very hard. I'm a talkative person. So that's very hard. But they did it. And I want to give just this Amplified Bible commentary about what happened with the seventh day. Also with the verse 15, Joshua 6:15 says, "Then on the seventh day they got up early at daybreak and marched around the city in the same way 7 times, just like God instructed. Only on that day they marched around the city 7 times. And the seventh time, verse 16, when the priests had blown the trumpets, Joshua said to the people, 'Shout, for the Lord has given you the city. We won. The city and everything that is in it shall be under the ban that is designated to be destroyed as a form of tribute to the Lord. And remember, only Rahab and her family and all of those who are in her house will be saved, because that was the promise they kept to her.'" And they did. They won. They were able to. They destroyed the Jericho and they conquered it. Now, the Amplified commentary says, for verse 15 says, "In ancient times, any walled town was called a city, quote unquote, and its ruler was called a king. But the fact that Joshua's army could march around Jericho 7 times in one day showed that it was a very small place. Though the walls were formidable, the area they enclosed only measured 7 acres. The whole circumference of the city was about 650 yards. I think that's pretty big. 1 yard is 3 feet, so 650 times 3 is that's the total of the feet. Jebusite Jerusalem, which David captured, was about the same size. And Schliemann, the German archaeologist, experienced a similar surprise in 1873 when he excavated the city of Troy, which Homer tells us withstood the great Grecian warriors for quite some time. It would almost seem that these ancient cities were more like places of refuge for the area's population when an enemy approached. During peaceful times, a large proportion of the inhabitants would live outside the city's walls because they were shepherds and farmers. Generally, only the craftsmen and administrators lived within the walls. That's very interesting historical context. Now, Joshua chapter 7. The reason I like reading these commentaries to you all is just to give you guys a little more context, maybe even a further explanation of the Hebrew lexicon and the language, so we can understand why they would translate that to the English equivalent of the word. And also just to give a little history for those of you who are interested. Joshua chapter 7 talks about Israel's defeated at Ai. It's a land Ai. I'm calling it Ai. The reason was there was a trespass from a family, specifically a man of this family in the tribe of Judah, and his name is Achan. He was the son of Carmi, the son of Zabdi, the son of Zerah, and he's from the tribe of Judah. And we all know that the Lion of Judah is Jesus, so Jesus is actually from the tribe of Judah. Interesting that this tribe gets punished because they did a trespass. And God says, I'm angry and I'm not going to be with you guys because there was a trespass. Someone took something of the land of Jericho when God specifically told them. I forgot to mention this in Joshua chapter 6 when I was talking about it. God said, don't touch anything. Anything you see like gold, silver, like monetary value will be for me and in the treasury. And also the treasury will disperse those funds. It's not just all like, oh, God is keeping it and not doing anything with it. It's going to many different things, like how our tithes and offerings go for many purposes now. So they went to attack this people, Ai, right? Because that was the next conquest. But a lot of Joshua's soldiers died. So he's heartbroken. He is crying. He's crying, oh God, God, why did you do this? Why did you allow this to happen? He's like, I thought we just defeated Jericho. And like now Joshua's name was getting famous. Like, this is a great warrior, great military leader, great political leader. And now this is what's going on. Like, now I'm getting defeated at all these ends. Like, a lot of my soldiers are gone. So God tells him, well, the reason why is what I said before. I am angry because someone has this trespass. I can't be with you guys because of this violation. So Joshua has to find out who it was. So they were able to find out that it was Achan, like I mentioned earlier. And Joshua said, why did you do this? So Achan gives the story that when they were conquering Jericho, he sees this Babylonian garments and he sees like gold, silver, and different monetary value, like properties and objects, and he said, I coveted it, I saw it, and I desired it, like I wanted it for me. And we knew that was supposed to be for God, and we know that God is not a selfish God. He would have distributed to the people in one way or another. It would have been for maybe like for the cause of the poor. Maybe it was for the priest. Remember, the priest didn't have a salary. It was for different reasons. It's not like God's keeping it and like chilling with it. Just to put it that simple, I just want us to get that context, that God is not a selfish God. He's a selfless God. We're the ones who are selfish. Oh, poor Achan, the sin of Achan. So him and his whole family were stoned and burned that day. Very, very brutal death that had to be done. And that's what God allowed because of this horrible violation. And we do see that every time someone in the Bible steals directly from God, it has a bad ending. It's not a warning like, oh, if you steal from God, like this is it, is your last day. No, but you will face consequences. And then God's wrath was like, satisfied, and he was like, okay, now we can move forward with the next thing we have to do in order to, settle in Canaan. So this story was a little sad. I started questioning why the family, if it was the man. We don't know the little minute details. We don't know if the family helped, were part of an accomplice. We also don't know what role they had or what role they didn't. All we know is, like I mentioned in another video, sometimes the toxic patterns, toxic choices we make will go into the next generation, and it's not their fault. So that is why I urge you as a counselor to just be mindful of your choices. It will affect your generation or your family, loved ones, yourself, our friends and family. We have to just be mindful of that and try to do what we can, right, when we can, but trying to do what God tells us to do too. Because at the end, he's doing it for our salvation, but most importantly, our protection and for our own good. What did it benefit this guy to save all that gold, right? He actually, and it says in the verse, let me tell you right now. It says in verse, it's in, behold, they are hidden in the ground inside my tent with the silver underneath. Verse 21. So he didn't even waste it. He didn't even use it. He literally just saved it to keep it. Like, I don't know. That was very interesting. And Joshua sent the messengers. They found it in the tent. And then, then they die. So this is going to be an interesting chapter for tomorrow, where there's the conquest of Ai and the next remaining part of the story of Joshua. So we have to do our best to obey God's word. If we don't know how, please reach out to a local church, reach out to us, even read your word and just ask for God, how can I obey you? What does it mean to obey you? What does it mean to follow your law? Right? We know his law is the 10 commandments. We also know it's to mean love God with all you have, but also to love the whole world. And when we love the world and we love God, we do good deeds. We do good things for ourselves and for everyone. And we try our best each and every day. So thank you, everyone, and God bless. Have a good night or have a good afternoon, wherever you guys are joining. Thank you once again. Bye-bye.